Hey guys, in today's video I bring you an impactful story full of shocking revelations. Let's meet Alarik Monroy, a former athlete who faced two near-death experiences and came back with powerful messages about what really happens to the soul after the body dies. During his second NDE, he saw souls trapped in fire, heard an urgent spiritual warning about premature cremation, and discovered the terrifying truth about the death cord. I never imagined that everything that defined who I was could be ripped away from me so quickly. I grew up in Flagstaff, surrounded by ancient trees, high-altitude trails, and a sky so vast it taught me to dream big. From an early age, running was more than movement. It was freedom. And when I discovered triathlon, it was as if my body had finally found its mission. I competed for years, traveled the world, piled up medals and contracts, but there was a silent price that I would only hear too late. The overload, the denial of pain, the signals ignored in the name of performance. The injuries started discreetly, like whispers, a discomfort in the lower back, a creaking knee. But over time, those whispers turned into screams, and then silence. That silence that comes when the doctor looks you in the eye and tells you your time is up. 31 years and the career I built with blood, discipline, and sacrifice was over. I refused to accept. When I was told about an experimental surgery that could perhaps restore some of my mobility, I grabbed the idea like it was my last breath. The risk was high, the possibility of permanent sequelae is real, but there was something more painful than being trapped in a limited body. It was the idea of never moving like I used to. The night before the procedure, my apartment was full. My parents came from Tucson, my old teammates, Lena. She held my hand for hours. "You're not just a body, Alarik," he said. "Even if you don't run anymore, you still run inside." She was right. But I couldn't hear it at that time. There was fear, yes, but also a strange peace. I didn't know if I would come back, but I gave in. I closed my eyes, and before the anesthesia kicked in, I murmured, "If there's anything beyond, I'm ready." There was something beyond. During the first moments of anesthesia, I felt something different. It wasn't a sudden transition. It was like slipping out of a cocoon, a gentle, inexplicable separation. Within seconds, I realized I was no longer there in a physical sense. My body was still on the gurney, wrapped in sheets, surrounded by doctors and monitors, but I, the part that thought, saw, and felt, was above, floating, watching. It was surreal. I saw everything with absolute clarity. The sweat on the anesthetist's forehead, the concentrated eyes of the surgeon, the cold light of the operating room. I could even hear the rhythmic beats in the devices, but there was no fear, just complete silence and deep curiosity. So that's it? I thought. Is this dying? But I didn't feel like I was dying. I felt like I was moving away from something smaller and towards something bigger. An energy field began to form around me, like a translucent veil that slowly opened, revealing another scene, more vivid than any earthly landscape. The colors had a life of their own. There was a golden light that didn't hurt the eyes, it just warmed the soul. I was led, or perhaps gently pulled, by an invisible force that seemed to know my every fear, my every question. As I passed through that veil, I saw floating gardens, as if the earth had been redesigned by a higher consciousness. The flowers danced without wind, the waters ran upwards, and there were bridges of light connecting hanging hills. It was as if the very concept of gravity did not exist there. Nothing weighed, not my body, not my traumas. And it was in this environment that he appeared. A luminous presence appeared in front of me. He wasn't walking, but he was getting closer. He didn't speak, but he touched me with thoughts. His form was human, but at the same time, beyond definition. "I am Gabriel," I said, and I felt the name vibrate inside me as if every cell recognized that being. "You went through the first door," he explained. "Now let's see what you need to remember." Gabriel didn't take me along paths. He took me through sensations. We floated together through that dimension where time seemed to fold in on itself. At a certain point, everything around us dissolved, giving way to a sacred, silent, and immense space. In the center, there was an altar of light, and about him, a book. But it was no ordinary book. It pulsed as if breathing. Its pages were made of a translucent living substance, with a texture that seemed made of liquid light and memory. "This is the book of life," Gabriel said softly, but the phrase resounded like thunder from within. "Here are all the moments that shaped you." The book opened without touching. The pages turned by themselves until they stopped in front of me, and then I saw it. I saw myself as a child, running through the trees of Flagstaff with my father laughing behind me. I saw my mother teaching me how to swim. I saw the first love and the first abandonment. Every memory, good or bad, washed over me like a wave of truth. There was no denying anything. I saw how many times I lied to protect my image, the times I remained silent when I should have spoken, the small kindnesses that I did without thinking, and that became giants in the memories of others. But what was most impressive was how I felt, not just what I did, but what others felt because of what I did. It was like experiencing life through the eyes of everyone who crossed my path. "You're not on trial," Gabriel told me. "It is being remembered. There is no condemnation here, only awareness." Every mistake was shown to me with love, every hit with humility. What I previously saw as failures now appeared as opportunities for growth, and what I thought was irrelevant, like a long hug or a smile given to a stranger, appeared with moving intensity. Everything was part of a mosaic, a design that could only be seen from above, a greater purpose. "You came to feel, to fall and get up, to remember who you are," Gabriel said. "But it's not over yet." At that moment, I felt a gentle force pulling me back. Something in my essence knew it was time to go back. Returning was not a choice. It was a calling. There was no voice saying, "Come back," but a deep, almost magnetic force pulling me back into my body. I didn't want to go. After feeling that unconditional love, that clarity that doesn't exist on earth, returning to the weight of the flesh felt like returning to a place without color. But something inside me said that my mission was not complete. The surrounding. Light began to dissolve. The altar disappeared like mist in the wind. Gabriel was still looking at me with an expression of serenity. "You will come back different. Remember what you saw. Speak out when the time comes and don't be afraid of the shadows." Before I could ask further, I was enveloped by a warm darkness, as if I were being wrapped inside myself. The sound came back first. Beeps. Voices. The muffled sound of footsteps. Then the pain, not physical but emotional. The longing for the peace I had felt. When I finally opened my eyes, I saw the ceiling of the ICU. It was back. Alive, but incomplete. The nurse ran over, calling the doctor. "He's awake. He's conscious." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and scratchy. My eyes filled with tears. Not because of the pain of the surgery, but because of the impact of what he had left behind. During the following days, I tried to explain what had happened, but how can I put the eternal into human words? Lena came to visit me, and when she held my hand, I just said, "I've seen it all. Life, as it really is." She didn't doubt it. He remained silent, his eyes teary. "You always had something more, Alarik. Maybe now that's waking up." Doctors said the surgery had been successful, but I knew the biggest repair had happened on the inside. It was no longer just the body that healed, it was the soul. I spent weeks in rehab, but something had changed. People started to comment. "You speak differently now. Your look has changed. There is something about you that calms you down." And I knew. I had come back with something, a memory, a truth. It was a mission that I still didn't fully understand, but that would accompany me until the end. Time passed, but that first experience never left me. I carried their images, sensations, and truths as if they were tattoos on my soul. Each step in physical recovery was accompanied by a deeper question. Why was I shown all this? For what? The answer seemed distant until the day the earth pulled me hard again. It was a cool fall morning in Flagstaff. The pine trees swayed gently, and the smell of wood mingled with the clean mountain air. I had accepted an invitation from an old trainer for a ride on the outskirts of the city. After all, contact with nature brought me some kind of balance. With each step the horse took, I felt the ground, felt life pulsing beneath me, until something got out of control. A sharp sound, perhaps a snap of a dry twig, made the animal startle. He reared up. I lost control. The world spun. I was thrown into the air and everything seemed to slow down, as if time was warning me that once again I would cross the threshold. I felt the dry impact of my head against something hard. There was no pain, just silence. And then, the dark. But not an empty dark. It was a dense dark, full of expectation. I knew that feeling. I was leaving my body again. The transition was abrupt, unlike the first. There was no lightness. It was like being sucked into a whirlpool. Upon emerging, I found myself in a place of intense colors but also with dense shadows around. The room pulsed with energy, but there was a tension in the air, as if there was something unresolved there. Gabriel appeared once again, but different. There was urgency in his presence. His eyes, once full of peace, were now serious, almost distressed. "You have crossed the second door," he said, "and there are things you need to know. Forces are moving, and some want to stop you from fulfilling your mission." I wanted to speak, but I couldn't. I just listened to him. And I knew at that moment that this new experience would be much more than a reunion with light. It was a confrontation with what is hidden in the shadows. Everything around me seemed to vibrate with intensity. The light was no longer pure and soft as the first time. Now it was charged, mixed with darker tones, as if a spiritual storm was brewing. Gabriel walked ahead of me, and I followed him, even without moving my feet. We floated amid a field of forces that seemed alive, energies that whispered, that watched, some trying to cling to me. He reached out his hand, and when he touched it, everything around him stopped. The space opened up, revealing a scene that left me breathless. A battle of sorts. Not with weapons, but with light and shadow, intention and presence. Souls seemed to wander around in confusion. Some glowed. Others, huddled and somber, writhed, as if trapped between worlds. "Not everyone understands that life goes on," said Gabriel, "and many remain between the veils, not knowing that they have already departed." He then took me to a higher point. From there, I saw Earth, not the physical planet, but the energetic mesh that surrounded it. I saw thoughts moving like threads of light and shadow, connecting people, places, decisions, and I understood what he wanted to show me. Everything matters. Each choice reverberates. "You must come back," he said, looking into me, but now with a warning. "There are forces that work to make humanity forget the soul. They encourage haste, disconnection, fear of death. They want to erase rituals, silence symbols, break the ties between worlds." Gabriel then touched my chest, and something activated. I saw quick scenes, people being cremated right after they died. I saw their souls, still attached to their bodies, feeling the heat, the pain, the agony of not being able to free themselves in time. The horror written on spiritual faces trying to scream without sound. The time after death is sacred. It is transition. The cord that connects body and spirit needs to be broken gently, and that takes time. "You need to tell the world this, Alarik, before it's too late." I wanted to deny it, saying it was too big for me, but something inside me knew this was real. It was a calling, and there was no way to escape. The image of that silver cord burned itself into me like fire on my skin. During that experience, I realized its existence with a clarity that no human language can fully express. He seemed to be made of liquid, light, vibrating between my physical body, asleep in some hospital, and my consciousness, there next to Gabriel. It was beautiful and at the same time fragile. Each thread pulsed with what still connected me to Earth. Memories, people, unresolved desires. This is the link that keeps the soul connected to the body until natural rupture, Gabriel explained. As long as it exists, the soul feels the body, and the body in a way still carries the soul. It was then that he showed me something that chilled me to my very core, a soul that had been ripped out prematurely. She screamed, not with voice but with vibrations so intense they made me cringe. Cremation had been carried out minutes after clinical death, but the spirit was still there, attached. And the fire felt as if it were still alive. That's why the ancients waited. That's why wakes lasted for days. That's why they lit candles, prayed. All of this helps detachment. It helps the cord to dissolve in peace. Gabriel then conveyed to me a message that I felt like an inner commandment. Spread this, not out of fear, but out of respect. The soul needs time. Every post-death minute is part of the birth to the other side. The images multiplied, ancient cultures that knew, people who waited, and now, the rush, oblivion, the mechanization of death, the brutal rupture of the connection with the divine. I turned my eyes to Gabriel, wanting to understand more, but he just said, "You were chosen to remember, and to remember others. To honor the crossing of the soul is to honor the life." At that moment, I felt the cord begin to vibrate differently. Earth's call returned. I knew it was time to move on from that plan once again, but not like before. Now, I carried a responsibility. I woke up little by little, like someone emerging from a deep dive into waters that no longer belong to this world. My eyes slowly opened, dazzled by artificial lights. There was the smell of antiseptic, the sounds of machines, and the feeling of being heavy. Incredibly heavy. For a moment, I didn't understand where I was, until I recognized the white ceiling of the hospital and Lena's scared face, who was crying next to me. You're back," she whispered, squeezing my hand so hard I barely felt my fingers. It took hours before I could put the words together. My throat burned, my head throbbed, but my soul was on fire with everything I had experienced. When I finally managed to speak, I just said, "He showed me. The cord. The time. We can't burn souls alive." The words sounded disjointed, to her at that moment. But something in my gaze made her understand that I wasn't delusional. Doctors said I had lost consciousness for almost 7 minutes, that it was a miracle that I survived that fall. But I knew the real miracle wasn't surviving. It was coming back with full memories of something that most people forget when they cross the veil. Over the next few weeks, something changed inside me, not just in the way I saw life, but in the way people saw me. Strangers would come up and talk to me as if they knew I could actually hear them. Patients in corridors looked me in the eye as if finding a safe haven. Ministers, nurses, even a janitor, they all seemed drawn to a calm that now accompanied me. I didn't talk about the experience with everyone, but when someone opened their heart, I knew exactly what to say, and when they asked me how I knew, I smiled, like Gabriel did with me, and said, "Maybe I'm just remembering something we've all forgotten." Lena started visiting me every day. Sometimes she would just sit and be silent with me. And even the silence now had weight. Everything had. Every gesture, every word, every soul that passed by me. I knew. My life was no longer mine. After leaving the hospital, every step I took felt charged with a new purpose. The first walk outside the hospital was like crossing back into a world I didn't fully belong to anymore. The sky was clear, the wind was light, but I could see beyond. as if I still carried the light from the other side in my eyes. I knew I couldn't keep all that to myself. I started writing, first as a way of processing, then, like an inevitable impulse. The words came as if someone was breathing them into me. Stories, visions, teachings, the sacred time of the soul, the silver cord, the dangers of haste. I wrote without thinking about who would read it. I just knew I needed to get out. It was Lena who read it first. He cried. He said it could change lives, that it was more than a testimony. It was a calling. She introduced me to a small loss support group where grieving parents sought comfort after losing children to sudden illnesses or accidents. When I told my story, there was no judgment, just silence. That kind of reverent, presence-filled silence. And at the end, a white-haired lady approached me and told me, "My son was cremated 2 hours after his death." I felt, inside, that he wasn't ready, but no one listened to me. Now I understand why. It was there that I realized I had become a bridge, not by choice, but by necessity of life itself. I was invited to speak at churches, community centers, spiritual gatherings, and in each place someone would come up to me afterward with teary eyes, telling me that something inside them always knew there was more between life and death. I only confirmed what their souls already sensed. Pastor Nolan, a tough-talking, open-hearted man, became an ally. He helped me translate spiritual experiences into words that others could embrace. I said my journey touched on something beyond doctrine. It touched the mystery. And even Dr. Hawk, the surgeon who once saw me as just another case of miraculous recovery, began to rethink his stance. He called me at the hospital weeks later and said, almost without meeting my eyes, "Maybe there really is something that science still can't explain." Today, when I look back, I no longer see the pain, loss, or the end of my career as tragedies. I see portals, bridges that led me to discover what most of us spend our entire lives avoiding facing: that death is not an end, it's a sacred crossing, that every life needs to be honored, and every soul respected on its journey. My mission is not to convince, and to remember. Remember that prayers after death are not just comfort for the living. They are paths of light for those who depart. That lighting a candle, waiting, watching with love, singing, crying, all of this is part of a farewell with dignity. That the soul listens, that she feels, and when time is respected, she can continue in peace. The visions I had are still alive in me. Sometimes they appear in dreams, others in silence. I see people's eyes and feel what they can't say. The pain of grief, the fear of the unknown, the feeling that death is unfair. And then I remember the book of life, the living, pages I saw turn by themselves. Everything has a time, a purpose, a frequency that can only be understood from there. I'm not a saint, neither guru. I still make mistakes, I get angry. I shut up when I should speak. But I carry within me a truth that I cannot deny. And it reveals itself in the way I listen, like a hug. How I walk, how I look at the sky before going to sleep, how I honor time. And how, whenever someone leaves, I pray for them for 3 days straight, hoping that the silver cord dissolves with love, not pain. The biggest transformation didn't happen when I left the body. It happened when I came back and decided live with an awakened spirit. When I understood that every word can be a thread of light, every gesture, a breath of healing. And even if I'm silent, I can be a bridge. A bridge between what you see and what you feel. If you are reading this, perhaps you feel this calling too. Maybe it felt like there was more, that there was always more. And the truth is, you're right. On the other side, there is light. There is beauty. And there is a love that never goes off. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.